Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. You have your two PCOS and fertility and luteal phase defect and functional medicine registered dietitians hanging out here to chat with you today about your fertility care. And we have a special guest, Gabriela Rosa. She's in her last year getting her PhD at Harvard. Is a Harvard awarded fertility specialist, founder of the Rosa Institute, and author of Fertility Breakthrough, Overcoming Infertility and Recurrent Miscarriage when Other Treatments Have Failed. She's pioneered telehealth-based integrative fertility care, making evidence-based solutions accessible worldwide. She's also the creator and host of the Fertility Challenge, a free online program that reaches tens of thousands globally each year. Her F.E.R.T.I.L.E method has supported more than 204,000 people across 111 countries, with published research demonstrating a 78.8% live birth rate among patients in her signature program, even after years of infertility, recurrent miscarriage, and failed treatments. And today we have the honor of chatting with her about trying to conceive and conceiving naturally after IVF. So welcome, Gabriela. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
What drew you into this subject matter? Why have you devoted decades of your life studying and treating this specific plight of many humans that are going through infertility and struggling to grow their family?
It's a very good question. I had this little delusion when I graduated from naturopathic medicine that I could help make the world a better place, one healthier baby at a time. And, that was what kind of led me to be interested in talking to prospective parents about how do you improve your health, how do you improve the container that is going to gestate a healthy child, and certainly, with the view of that being the beginning of a whole entire lifetime of improvements that could be coming from, being in the best possible place at the start of the process of conception, having babies, etc. So that's how it started. And it certainly was a very interesting set of conversations. I think that when I was studying to graduate, I was really asking myself, what is a conversation that I see myself having for at least the next 20 years? And I landed on this because of that reason, because of that delusion, I call it. But what ended up happening about 10 years into it was that I was having patients come to me asking for additional support that I didn't know if I could actually provide. The very first time that somebody came to me with 10 years of infertility and basically wanted to get my assistance, I was pretty much ready to turn that person away, and go, I don't think I can help you. I don't think that this is going to be enough after you've had multiple years of trying to get pregnant, multiple failed IVF cycles, and, now you're wanting to do this. It was a question mark in my mind, but what this lady said to me really changed the course of my career. And that was, I'm going to give up anyway. So I just want your help to be healthier. And I was like, well, I can do that. That's something that I can do. And so that's how it began, because I treated her. She ended up, for the first time in her life, getting pregnant naturally after, multiple IVF cycles that didn't work. And even though I still had a little bit of uncertainty in my mind, I was like, was this the thing that helped? Was it really? I was interested in perhaps exploring it further. And I didn't have to wait long until the next person who came to me with an even more difficult sounding case. This lady had then been trying for 19 years, multiple failed IVF cycles as well. And she
At
really
what
was kind
age
of,
are these ladies starting to try to conceive? This is what's
she was
blowing my mind.
43. Yeah, she was 43, 44. So, and the other one was 42 by the time she had a baby. So, the main thing about it, and both of them had not had, pregnancies or babies previously. So this was
Wow.
primary infertility. And then after that, of course, there were multiple secondary infertility cases that was really interesting. One in particular was a lady who had done 20 failed IVF cycles on a secondary infertility case. And I was like,
Oh my.
how do you even, how do you even, you know?
How do you
But
How is
afford? How
IVF
do
still
you?
legal after some, like, how do these doctors who have vowed to do no harm look at themselves and live with themselves
it's
after
really
doing this?
interesting because it's such, that's such a good question that unfortunately isn't answered on an individual level. This is a healthcare system fracture of the greatest kind. And, if you think about different healthcare systems around the world, where you have universal healthcare systems like Canada and the UK, and then you have, privatized systems like in the US. And of course, those universal healthcare systems also leverage private healthcare system,
Yeah, we've
private
got sort of a mix
um,
here, don't we?
well, here it's mostly privatized, which
For fertility care,
essentially
totally. Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
fertility care, yeah. And so what happens is, and I mean, even for general healthcare, like if you think about it, the only people that actually get Medicaid are the people who can't afford any treatment, right? And so it becomes one of those really challenging things when it comes to fertility, particularly when, if you look at the general population, by 2 years of trying, 96.4% of people have conceived, right? Which means that you end up with a situation that it's really less than 5% of the overall population that experiences infertility.
That
Of
just so
course, when you're
blows my
going
mind
through
because
it,
that's the only people I work with. It's like, to me, it seems like there's just, this is
that they're
everybody.
everyone.
Everybody in the world is having this problem.
Yeah.
But wow, that way to put that into perspective. Wow.
Same with me, but this is why, there is such underservice when it comes to fertility
Totally.
care, because ultimately, if you think about what actually causes the deaths in the general population and in the healthcare system, it's cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer.
Totally.
And
Mm-hmm.
all the funding goes towards that because that's a huge priority. It's a life-threatening condition. As much as I will be the most unpopular person on earth to say, nobody needs a baby to survive.
Mhm.
And so, hence
Yeah.
why this is something that is not prioritized outside of the personal experience
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
infertility.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, and so these types of cases where, and so the second person, as I was just quickly finishing telling that story, she literally was not that keen actually on treatment. It was her husband who was very, very adamant that, okay, we got to give this
Mm.
thing one last try, and again, after optimizing every aspect of both of their health, it was incredible to get to a point where it's like, okay, here we've got a natural pregnancy, natural conception after many, many years. I mean, 2 decades. Who even tries for that long? Like it really was a
That's
huge,
like the
and at that point,
majority of your fertile life. Like, if you think
precisely,
you
that's your
hit
entire reproductive
puberty
life.
at, I don't know,
Yeah.
I guess people are hitting puberty younger, but I guess I feel like about 14, which is maybe me being like a
Yeah. But
90s
hopefully they're not having
child,
sex at 14.
Well,
but it's still, I
Unprotected
mean,
at
your
least.
reproductive life, like
Yeah.
post puberty is more what I mean. Like when your
according,
biology doesn't care, like from when your
yeah.
biology says you can have a baby to when your biology says you can't have a baby. That's like almost all of it right there.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you've mentioned teen pregnancies because we have officially hit the point in evolution where teen pregnancies are actually less than women over 40 trying to get pregnant.
Wow.
So we've that table has flipped so to
Wow.
speak. And so now it's a majority of people trying to conceive are older. And part of that is because, couples are meeting later in life. We are living
Hmm.
longer. There is definitely, fertility has not increased in its potential, despite the fact that life expectancy has
Yeah, biology
drastically
hasn't really
increased.
changed.
Exactly. And so we're in a situation where even though the average life expectancy now in Australia, for example, is 84, 85 years of age, fertility pretty much ends at 45-ish, you
Ish.
know?
Yeah.
Mhm. So you essentially are describing falling into this because you had a couple patients that showed up and were like, that can you be my Hail
Help me. Yeah.
Mary?
Hmm.
Yeah. And I feel like
Yeah,
Sophia and I can relate to that in some instances where it's
Totally.
like you've done all the things, you've gone even maybe as far as IVF and haven't come home with a baby. And now you're ready to focus on nutrition. Now you're ready to look at root cause medicine. And unfortunately, I think for a long time, this has kind of been the like, well, I guess we'll try it since nothing else seemed to have worked, even though arguably it's the most important thing, whether you achieve pregnancy naturally or not, is everybody's going to then go on to build a baby. And if you go on to build a baby, hopefully we have the best building blocks ready for you. Um, but hearing that, Gabriela, it makes me think, okay, so did this light a fire in you? Did you then decide like fertility is the most fun thing I've ever treated? I mean, where has the how did that take off from that to now I'm a fertility
Yeah, the
specialist?
long list of
And
accomplishments and contributions you've made.
yeah. So after that second person who came to me, those two cases were the cases. Like if you ever think of patients that changed your life, and I think that there's a lot of truth to the fact that, we as clinicians, practitioners, health advocates, whatever it is that you want to call yourself, we do change people's lives and we do transform people's lives to a huge extent, but we also are impacted by the patients we treat. And it's interesting to me to look back and reflect on the patients who changed my life. And
Mhm.
most of the patients who changed my life, they changed my life because of what they did was they changed my pre-existing belief that things were a certain way. And there have been many patients along that journey who have done that, who have expanded my horizons in terms of my thinking because of they were experiencing and what ended up changing as a result of implementation of an intervention that actually worked. So with these two cases, what happened after I treated the second one was that I really enjoyed the easygoingness of these people. You
Mm.
know, after so many years of infertility, at the end of the day, and I can see this as a commonality for both of these people, they were pretty much at a point where they're like, you know what, I just want closure. I don't even care if I have a
Mm.
baby anymore. I just want to know that I've given it my all and I've done everything that I possibly could. And that completely shifted the energy that they brought into, the experience for me. And so at that point, I realized something. I realized that I wasn't the person to be treating people who were like at that, I'm running out of time. I must do IVF right now because
Yeah.
otherwise I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
die. Like, I was like, you know what? Those people, somebody else is going to be the people for those people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the person for those people. Like, it is
Yeah.
not, they're not my people. You know, my people are the
Yes, I know
people who are,
exactly what you're saying.
yeah, they're my people. I realized, by going through that experience, that my people were the people who are like, you know what? This hasn't worked. And I'm not going to let this be the definition of my life. I'm going to do absolutely everything I can. I'm going to take charge. And if it doesn't work, this is not going to be the end and be all and end all of my life. Right. I realized those
Yes.
were my people. And so I basically was like, okay, if that is the people who I feel most comfortable in guiding, supporting, ushering through a process, how do I need to show up and what do I need to say to attract those people, right? And so I basically decided there and then that was only going to work with people who had been trying to conceive and were having difficulty for 2 years or more. Whether that was infertility, miscarriage, failed treatment, you name it. Like, as long as they had been trying and they felt like they've tried enough, had enough failures, and they were ready to just like put that aside and go, okay, you know what? Let's just forget everything we thought we knew and let's start from scratch. Let's really build this back up in terms of what it is that needs to happen for us to see a complete different outcome. That was when everything changed, because then I started to literally only take on, like, I literally have an eligibility criteria for the people who come into my clinic now that basically is like, okay, are these factors met in order for me to work with these people? And I only treat difficult, complex cases. So I'm not the person who people come to for like been trying for 5 minutes, it hasn't worked. Like, I'm not for them.
Yeah.
Right. I treat people who have really experienced lots of different things that haven't worked, and they really need to figure out from a diagnostic first perspective and a whole body integrative health perspective how we're going to address those things. And we are very, there's a lot of depth that goes into that from an immunological perspective, from a biochemical perspective, from a metabolic health perspective. So it's, yeah, sure, we of course will use nutrition and general lifestyle factors as an important foundation upon which to overlay effective treatment. But the way I see it is that that's just my basic expectation. Like, those things just have to be met before they even begin, or if they haven't yet gotten to that point, sure, let's build that foundation and let's make sure that that's there. But in the way, for the people that I treat, that isn't everything, because usually they have already done a lot of those things. They have already seen, people like you guys who have really dialed in their nutrition, made sure that their supplements were right, make sure that, all of the things that could be in place in terms of doing the best that you can in your day-to-day were in place. So then you have to figure out, okay, well, what else is there? And usually this falls into a couple situation, because what happens is that fertility or infertility, we're dealing with 40% male factor, 40% female factor, 20% embryonic factor, and implantation failure issues, right? So if that's the case, then where we can most affect change is at the male and female factor piece. Because by the time you get an embryo, really you should end up with a baby. If that has not happened, then we need to figure out, okay, but why? What's happening in that situation? And the reason that usually doesn't happen is because there are other underlying factors that haven't been found. And so that's where the conversation begins as far as figuring out, okay, what do we do to change this?
Hey, Food Freedom Fertility listeners, we're taking a break from this episode to talk about our sponsor, Tempdrop. One of the reasons why Sophia and I love this brand so much is that it's an all-in-one solution and it's so easy to use. You wear this Tempdrop sensor on your upper arm during your sleep, and then in the morning when it's convenient for you, you sync it to their charting app. If you've been tracking your fertile signs for a while now, you'll know that this means freedom. And isn't this the Food Freedom Fertility podcast? In order to accurately track your basal body temperature, you need to wake up at the same time every morning. But what if you're a shift worker or your schedule differs and sometimes you sleep in and sometimes you don't? That's one of the reasons why I love this tech so much. Tempdrop uses the latest scientific knowledge to bring you an accurate method of cycle tracking and identifying your fertile window. Tempdrop's sensor continuously monitors your basal body temperature while you're sleeping. And then in the morning, you open the app on your phone and you sync the data. And what that means is that it's not transmitting information from this sensor next to your arm to your phone all night long. And I don't know about you, that gives me a lot of peace of mind that I'm not exposing myself to radiation all the hours that I'm sleeping. Because this tech makes tracking your temperature so much more accessible and really takes a lot of the brain power out of it. You don't even need to charge it every day. This is one of the reasons why I personally use TempDrop to track my own basal body temperature. Make sure when you go to tempdrop.com that you use our discount code exclusive to our Food Freedom Fertility listeners. That code is FFF15, or you can head to the link in our show notes of all these episodes. Click on that link and you'll get 15% off today. We are taking a break from the episode, and I want to chat with you a little bit about Fertility Cloud. If you've been told you need help ovulating, or you have PCOS and you're trying to figure out your next fertility step, I want to tell you about Fertility Cloud. They make fertility care simple, transparent, and affordable, especially when it comes to ovulation stimulation and ovulation induction treatments. Instead of waiting for months to see a fertility specialist or getting hit with surprise bills, Fertility Cloud lists every price clearly right on their website. You'll see exactly what you're getting into and exactly what it costs. No hidden clinic fees, no surprise invoices later. For my PCOS clients, this is huge. Their ovulation stimulation program can help jumpstart ovulation safely at home with physician guidance and medications delivered directly to you. You can do it all virtually, no driving to clinics or sitting in waiting rooms, and you can often even get appointments same day. If you're wondering, how do we do ultrasounds or what about lab draws? Don't worry, their concierge service helps determine where you can do that locally to you and coordinates with you on your behalf. It's just amazing. And here's the best part. If you're ready to take that next step, you can click the link in our show notes and get $50 off your first appointment. That means you get right in front of a fertility specialist for $115. That first visit gets you matched with a fertility doctor who actually understands your needs, and you'll walk away with a clear plan for your next cycle. So head to the link in our show notes, book your appointment, save $50 on your first Fertility Cloud visit, because fertility care should be transparent, affordable, and built for you.
You are everything, and everything that you're saying right now is just amazing. I don't know if it's just your adorable Australian voice, but it's just
Your
this,
cute bun.
your cute little swirl bun, your blue shirt. No, it's all so good. Okay, so I don't know what Caitlin was about to ask, but I can just say that, like, I know that
Run
I'm
for
on
it.
the edge of my seat and that our listeners are like, all right, hit us with the juice. Like, then what is it? What do you
What is the next thing?
what
Yeah.
are you
If
finding? What are the common things that you're finding? How are you looking for them? What kind of testing are you doing? Like, every one of our followers has like their pen and paper out right now.
Yeah. You see, and this is where it becomes really, I guess, disappointing. And the reason is that, as you can imagine, this is very personalized, right? So it's like you can't just say, and this is why treating somebody in the general population to overcome infertility versus treating somebody who has gone through multiple failed cycles, attempts, years is very, very different. And I'll tell you what, the actual things that you need to do aren't any different from what they should have done or their doctors should have recommended them to do before starting to try. The problem is that the longer
Okay.
somebody has gone through infertility and failed treatments, the more they're told, oh, it's a numbers game, just keep trying, let's apply more treatment, as opposed to
Mm,
let's actually go back
perfect.
to the drawing board and figure out, okay,
Yes.
what is happening here? I'll give you an example. I had a couple who came to me after 14 years of infertility. Okay. And people can actually look at this case on, in fact, there's many, many, many cases that people can look at on my Instagram account, Gabriela Rosa Fertility. So, but this couple in particular, they had been trying for 14 years. And by the time they came to me, they had done 6 IUI cycles that failed and 2 IVF cycles that failed. Now you can imagine by 14 years, now she's hearing, oh, your eggs are no good. You're old. You need donor egg, right? So I go to the case and I look at what's happening, and as I'm assessing it, I figure out that, okay, we have a low sperm count. So I ask the husband, I say, is this the first result that you've had a low sperm count? Has this fluctuated over time? He goes, what do you mean a low sperm count? I'm like, you have 2 million sperm. We need at least 20 million. So is this the first time that you have been told? And he goes, I've never been told I have a low sperm count.
At 2 million?
I'm like, okay.
That's like
I beg your
Grandpa
pardon, but
George
fine.
numbers there. That's like what you should see in
So
somebody who's like 80.
no, but like even somebody who's 80 probably has a better sperm count. That
Fair.
happens because of other things. And so it's about figuring out why, right? And so basically, like Hugh Hefner got a 20-year-old play bunny pregnant. So
Oh,
at
disgusting,
90,
but yes.
so like this is what I'm saying. Like this is not, you can be a grandpa and still be fertile, supposedly. Anyway, so the whole point here is this. Once I started actually assessing the case and I figured out that these were factors and these were parameters that we needed to improve, I start asking, okay, why? Let's figure out, let's see. Do we have a DNA fragmentation result? Do we have a semen culture? Do we have sperm antibodies that have been assessed? Where are those things at? Because all of those things will make a difference to how an IVF cycle proceeds, whether fertilization occurs, and even whether implantation happens. And on top of that, whether miscarriages are more likely, right? And so then I'm like, okay, as I'm assessing the case, I'm assessing both of them. I'm looking and we start doing diagnostic tests. What do we find? Both of them had chlamydia, hadn't been tested for, hadn't been treated, and it was like long standing and then by
I
this
gotta
point I'm
go.
thinking, gosh,
I
do we
can't
even have
anymore at this point.
do we do we even have clear patent fallopian tubes at this rate? They've been trying for 14 years. So luckily the fallopian tubes were clear, so that was fine. We of course go and do treatment with antibiotics, of course, right? Because we don't want to be here forever.
You go ahead and
And
reach back into the
let's
1890s
go.
and get you some of
Absolutely.
that good old amoxicillin. No, what was it, like 1935 or something when that? Anyway, but
What?
yeah,
Like,
come
just
on.
give me all of the
Technology
antibiotics
from
there are.
yesteryear. You go
Right?
ahead and get that
And so
$4 prescription.
exactly. After how many, like I spoke to a lady today. Sorry, I digress because this is just crazy to me. She's in the UK. She's telling me that she's had a couple of IVF cycles that haven't worked. The doctors have said that she has to go and do another one. I'm looking at the results. There's nothing. Like there's no immunological components tested. There's no inflammatory components. There's nothing, right? So then I say to her, so are you paying for this cycle out of pocket? Because in the UK they cover 2 cycles, as part of the NHS.
Yeah, if you
Are
meet
you
the right parameters, yes.
Exactly. And so she basically was like, no, I'm paying out of pocket. I said, so how much are you paying? And she goes, £16,000. I said, listen, you pay me 5 and I will make sure that you don't have a situation where the next cycle is a question mark, like whether it's going to work. It's like, my God. And so the doctor had told her that, and this was this lady that I spoke with today, the doctor had told her this, and she not only accepted it, she was going to go with it. The doctor said to her, look, there's these immunological component tests that you can do, but I wouldn't recommend doing them just yet. Let's do the next cycle. If the next cycle fails, then we'll go and do more testing. I'm like, lady, are you saying to me that for the cost of the tests, which let's be ridiculous and super conservative and say that the tests themselves, if you pay for them out of pocket, are going to be like £2,000 or £3,000? And that's crazy. Okay. But let's just be crazy. Let's be crazy. Are you saying that you are going to go and pay 16,000 on the chance that it might work and forego 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, however many of tests that can actually tell you, will this cycle be successful or not? And she goes, yeah, no, like
Or
now
have a chance at success. A
now that you
chance
put
at
she
success.
goes, now that you put it that way, yeah, I think it's better that I do the test first. I'm like, yes, it surely is. So that's the kind of context. So when you ask me, Sophia, what is so special that you're doing? Nothing really.
You're
Nothing
looking in
really.
Just
places
good
other people don't
investigative
look.
work.
And we're just
No,
literally
this
starting
is
from
the juice. You're
scratch.
answering my exact question. This is what everyone's wondering. Like, what was the story with the girl that was trying for 20 years? What was the story with the girl that
Well,
had
so
done?
that was 14. So that was the 14-year one with the chlamydia. Basically, what ended up happening there was that after we treated both of them, there were many metabolic concerns as well. Like she had diabetes, there was lots of different things, and she was a pharmacist, so it wasn't like she was a lay person. Like we get a lot
Yeah,
in our
yeah.
program. We get lots of like doctors, scientists,
Lawyers.
like you
Yeah.
Yeah.
name it.
Smart
So
folk.
like absolutely. They're like, you know what? I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm not going to like try and figure out what to do here. I'm just going to go and do it. Right.
Get the best. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
basically, she conceived first try after we treated the chlamydia naturally with her own
Wow.
eggs and her husband's sperm. So,
Wow.
things like this. So when you ask me, Caitlin, what lit the fire? It's this shit that goes
Someone's
on. I'm sorry, I don't know
incompetence
if I
to
can
treat
swear in this
well.
podcast, but
You
like,
can do you
I
Gabriella, at this point you could say anything. You are a golden god on our podcast here. We
honestly, I
are.
like it. To me, it's just like it infuriates me. It literally infuriates
This
me,
is the kind
and
of
I
stuff that
know.
keeps me up at night. Like I'm sweating over here right now hearing this because it is so you just gosh, you think about the value of human life. And you think about, these people changed your life, changed your practice, these patients, but really it was the babies born that did this. Because if you would have done this and no baby came of it, like, would you still be doing what you're doing? Would it still have lit this? And so it's like these babies born, what a change for everyone. What a
Mm,
change for
mm.
everyone. Like the ecosystem of our species is changed by these babies being born. It is so powerful. And the I don't I don't want to make it sound like I just don't like fertility doctors because it's so not true. I sympathize with them. I greatly sympathize with them. Like at least in the US, what is required of them to become a physician? What is then required of them to become a specialist? We have asked so much of these people, and they have invested so much and sacrificed everything for this. And
Mm.
they get into practice, and the skill and that it takes to do a cycle of IVF and the time that it takes to do a cycle of IVF versus the amount of money they get paid. Versus if we look at what Gabriella is doing, taking much more time, investigating things much more deeply, and getting paid only $5,000 versus this person's getting paid $16,000. Like, I can't look at the life of a physician and say that I would do any better. If I had been through
No,
all of that, if I
you
had
would.
done all of that,
None of
if
us, none of us would
if
do
I
any
had
better.
that amount of debt and pressure, and I would be like,
I don't even think you need to make it a money thing. It's the tools they were trained to
Well, here's the
use.
thing. It is a money thing and it's a paradigm thing. And that is the problem, right? And it's not an individual
It's a
personal problem.
system
It's a
problem.
system problem. So what happens is when we're talking about IVF is a multi-billion dollar industry.
yeah,
It's driven by pharma. It's driven by, and again, look, it's about profit. Most clinics around the world have shareholders. What is
yeah,
it that companies that have shareholders must do? Demonstrate
show
Earn
profit.
profit.
money.
Hmm.
That's
Mhm.
it. full stop, because nobody's going to invest if they're not going to get a return. So is it that we have a doctor that doesn't want the best for their patient? Not exactly, and
No.
not at all. It's the fact that they work within a system that works within a paradigm that is completely broken. And so, with guidelines that are not human centric and not patient centric, right, they're systemic in terms of what it is that you need to do. Because again, this is a public health issue and it has to be addressed as such, because otherwise, what ends up happening is this: we're blaming doctors for their lack of doing, but ultimately, they have their hands tied
They have a
in terms
golden
of the
handcuff
system.
on each hand, tying them back.
100%. 100%, because the system does not allow them to go and do in-depth testing, because there is no budget and funding for that, because most people conceive naturally. So let's not waste time and money and energy. So this is why when we're looking at a universal healthcare system like the UK, where you have very stringent guidelines as to eligibility of unpaid treatment, so subsidized treatment, that's why that happens, because the government is like, you know what? We will entertain this for 2 minutes. More than that, pay out of your own
You need
pocket.
to be the BMI that we want, the age that we want. You need to have been trying this much. You
No
need to have a
children.
partner that's like this. You need to, yeah. I know that is also so dystopian and scary when we think about, I mean, not to get too political, but people often want that same healthcare system to be functioning in the US. And I'm like, I don't know if you know what you're asking for when you are saying you want these treatments, because then it's like you have to you have to meet all of these things exactly their way. And if you don't, then not only do you not get treatment, but now you have less to pay for it yourself, because now all your tax dollars went to this thing that you aren't even allowed to access because you
Yeah.
didn't do
Yeah.
the song and
Yeah.
dance.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. I think you all are making really good points, but our listener is here to hear I did IVF and I'm trying it naturally now, or I'm trying to avoid IVF. So, can we direct the conversation a little bit more towards what is it? I know it's not like groundbreaking, and you're not going to come in and say, like, eat this fruit from the middle of the
If you come in
Amazon,
here with a
right?
pyramid
Like,
scheme, Gabriella,
you are out.
this
We
would have
know
been
that you're not doing
the
that.
best pitch ever, because we are so sold right now. You say anything
No,
about
but
essential oils, I swear.
Oh,
But
God.
when you hear of clients, I mean, you wrote a book on how to navigate fertility after recurrent miscarriage or failed treatments. Like, talk to that person right now. What do you want to say to that person?
A lot of times people will not do what is required because they think of the money of actually going and paying for these things out of pocket, right? Paying for tests out of pocket, paying for, additional treatment out of pocket. It's the wrong strategy. I think that the number one thing that people need to understand when it hasn't been straightforward is that nobody's going to save you. Full stop. You have to take charge, which basically means that, yes, you have to see the dietitian. You have to do the things that are going to essentially optimize your chances. That includes proper diagnostics, that includes paying out of pocket for those things. Because if you don't, and here's where it becomes a little bit challenging, because you do have we end up with a situation where, because the healthcare system doesn't offer the most direct path to the things that you need, people go and try and find it outside of the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's completely decentralized. It's the wild west out there, honestly. Like, when you said, if you talk about essential oils, I'm like, seriously? And more, right? So there are
Yeah, right.
basically, it's like people will go online, they will listen to the best marketing message because it sounds good,
And who
because it
can tell?
sounds, and this is the thing. So, like you have, and look, I have no problem. Like, however people actually make their money, as long as they're adding value and they're bringing benefit to the person that they're helping and supporting, and people find value in that, great. But the thing about it is that, you know, here you have a fertility coach that has had, I was retargeted the other day for a fertility coach certification that was $47. Okay. And and I was thinking, wow, that is a bargain price. And I looked at the 10 modules that they were teaching, and I'm thinking, by Jesus, you will get these women who have done one IVF cycle and have had a baby, go and be certified as a fertility coach, and now all of a sudden start treating people who have been infertile for however long. And I go, well, that is not a good use of your fertility potential. So that's what I need people to hear. you know, is like, be
Yes. Gosh,
careful
you are so
with who you
articulate.
trust, where you learn from, because ultimately, this is what makes people run out of time to have a baby, especially when it
Right.
hasn't been easy, because they
Mhm.
start taking the Amazonian berry and the CoQ10 thinking, but
Mhm.
I'm doing everything I possibly can. And here you go. There's 1,000 things that you can do to improve your fertility. There's like 3 that actually move the needle. Those 3 are
Mhm.
personal to you. So you might be doing 800 of those things. None of them include the 3 that actually makes a difference to your particular situation. You run out of time to have a baby, trying. Like, that to me is like, it's heartbreaking.
Tragedy. Yeah, tragedy.
It
Absolute
is.
tragedy.
It
Mhm.
really is. So, I don't know, Caitlin, I don't know how else to say this, but, like, if that is not something that people really need to like question themselves and their care
Mhm.
providers about, I don't know what else is, because that's ultimately what ends up wasting a lot of time, effort, energy, potential, relationship conflict, right? Because there's only so much that people will go through, fail through, and then be ready to go, like, take the next
Especially like
punch.
what you just said, when there's a difference, like the gal who went through 19 rounds of IVF or whatever you said because her partner thought this was the golden ticket. That is where I see so much
That was
conflict
the 20
happen is you've got
years, 19 years of infertility, 20 IVF cycles is a different lady.
20
I
IVFs.
should talk
Okay.
about these cases in my book, actually, because they were just, like, they're the usual things that I see. And it sounds crazy that those are the usual things that I see. But those are the
This
people who
is
literally come to me all day.
Well, but this we see it too. And I mean, and then there is the other end of the spectrum where somebody actually in America didn't try that long, but they just have this idea that IVF works. And so they spend 4 months trying to conceive and it didn't happen on their perfect timeline. And so they move on to IVF and then IVF doesn't work. And then they come back around. And it's incredibly frustrating because you can elect into it and then be so failed by it.
or IVF works at a high. My saddest one, I guess, is when it works, but we didn't address these things. And so there is disease in the uterus, there is genetic issues being forced upon. There are children now being born with lifelong sicknesses and disabilities and issues because we bypassed the health of mom and dad. They went through a basic screen that was like, will you die if you get pregnant today, which basically all they're seems like it's all they're looking for. And then you end up with so many issues. Caitlin and I have seen this a lot of times. And I think it's sort of like the gal that you were talking about at the beginning, the one that's like, look, I don't care. I'll shake hands with the devil if I have to. I need to be pregnant today. I need to do this now. This has to be my life right now. Whether because she's, from a culture that's promoting that or her partner or like whatever. But that's the side of it that's like even more sad, I think, than I don't know. Failed cycles are so sad too, but it is really heartbreaking when it's like I don't have time to heal. I can't blah 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 metabolic health. Yeah, 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 infections. Can I get pregnant? I have to be pregnant and it has to be a boy and it has to be born on this date because this is what my astrology sign people say this will mean, like money and power for his life. So we have to be pregnant here and we have to induce here and we have to do it this way. And they want to control every piece of it.
We're going to take a break from this episode to hear about one of our sponsors. You've probably heard me say this before, but preparing your body for pregnancy is not just about you. It's about both of you. Fertility is truly a team effort, and that's why I love the Fullwell Fertility Trio for Two. Fullwell was founded by a fellow registered dietitian and fertility expert, Ayla Barmer, and this bundle was designed to support both partners in the months leading up to conception. It combines their top-rated prenatal vitamin, omega-3 fish oil, and a fertility booster supplement that covers things like CoQ10, N-acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid, and organic ashwagandha root extract. The nutrients here support overall egg quality, sperm health, fertility, and even your stress resilience. If your partner's semen analysis looks normal, or if it's suboptimal and we need to improve things, nutrition plays a key role for things like sperm motility, count, and DNA quality. For women, these same nutrients help with ovulation, egg development, and healthy hormone balance, not to mention mitochondrial support, which is a huge piece of how your gametes mature and get ready to be that queen egg or that king sperm that make it to combining to form an embryo. These things are foundational for a strong, healthy pregnancy. I personally love that Fullwell's formulas are third-party tested, they're evidence-based, and made with doses that actually match what the research shows we need. No fluff, no underdosing. So if you're planning to start trying this winter or sometime in 2026, or you've been trying to conceive for a while, it's time to think about starting to nourish your bodies for what's ahead, or take a step up from your current protocol to one that is high quality. Head to fullwellfertility.com and use the code FFF20 for 20% off your order. That's FFF20 at checkout. I'll drop the link in the show notes for this specific fertility trio bundle and for Fullwell, along with this code FFF20. Give yourself and your future family the best foundation with Fullwell's Fertility Trio for Two.
You know, what's really interesting, and you touch on something that I think is also important to bring up here, because a lot of the times the reason why people don't conceive are linked with proxy markers for long-term health,
Chronic
chronic health
disease.
disease. Exactly.
Yeah,
And
Mhm.
so,
so
you
true.
know, like very common thing to find, you know, when people are trying to conceive, ANA antibodies, which is immunological and causes clotting and, you know, basically increase the risk of miscarriage and implantation failure. MTHFR mutation, same thing, both linked to chronic cardiovascular disease and, you know, stroke, etc. So you kind of got to think, and there were a couple of studies that were really interesting, actually. There was one done on men and one on women, looking at when people had an infertility diagnosis, the increased risk of all-cause mortality was massively increased in people who had a diagnosis of infertility compared to the people who didn't. And this applied to
Mm,
both men and women. So the thing about not addressing these issues is that in the short term, yes, it will delay time to pregnancy. Yes, it can increase the risk of miscarriage. And of course, as a result, you know, there's lots of grief, trauma, you know, associated with all of those really
yeah.
challenging journeys. But then when you question, well, what does this mean for me being able to be around to raise my children, right? And we forget that the whole point of having children is actually to guide them through life. And if we don't
Yeah.
have the quality of life and quality of health that enables us to do that, well, are we really fulfilling our greatest duty as parents if we can help it? You see, of course, accidents happen, life
Yes.
situations happen, you know, all of those things being equal, understandable. But when it is a choice from the perspective of like, do I choose to look at, identify, and address health conditions that can negatively impact my future quality of life or not, because I must be pregnant on this particular minute? You know, those are questions, those are big philosophical questions as to, you know, why do we even have children?
Yeah, we were just talking about this. We had a different meeting, Caitlin and I, earlier to this one. Like, that was more about looking at towards a hopeful future and believing that there are good things to come. But that is exactly right, and that is what our listeners ultimately want. I think the thing that holds them back, the thing that makes that image dim, is pain. And being infertile today is so painful that it makes it tempting to want to do something, anything, to get that pain to stop. And the right treatment, the right whatever, even if it means this, that, or the other thing. That's sort of what I meant with like shake hands with the devil. Not that anyone's really going to do that, but like compromising things that you do ultimately truly want for like your life, like what you envision a long life with children being, those grow like dim when it seems like the pain of today is just so great. And I think that's really what the listeners who've been trying for a long time are experiencing, is, or maybe that even haven't been trying for a long time. I think even just an innocence lost in that every time you get a positive test, it will equate to a baby to keep. The innocence lost in, oh, we didn't use a condom yesterday, I'm pregnant today. Like that's what we're sort of all raised to believe. When that doesn't happen and your bubble is burst, it, in the longer that takes and the more loss you experience, the more painful it can be. And that I think makes people so vulnerable
Oh,
to falling
100%. And
into
hmm,
non-evidence based practices.
yeah, yeah. And I think that there is also, I mean, there is a lot of evidence. In fact, my doctoral thesis is exactly on this. It's the trauma, kind of infertility and miscarriage related trauma and grief that people
Mhm.
experience, as a result of exactly what you've just described, all of the things that you had envisioned that would happen that didn't. And that invisible grief that happens when you desire so deeply to hold your baby and that just doesn't eventuate because of either an embryo that doesn't thaw or an implantation that doesn't occur or a miscarriage that takes place. All of those things are very real and very grief inducing, very trauma inducing, especially when they keep occurring,
Oh
and
my
so
gosh, yes.
especially for years. I mean, I can't even imagine, like, the lady who I was saying about 19 years of infertility. I mean, I still am connected with her to this day, so many years on. But the thing about it is that, like, when I put myself in her shoes and think about what that would have been like for a 19-year period, hoping and wishing every month that you were pregnant and seeing however many, gosh, in that time, imagine just how many times she would have tested, even when she decided that, you know what, I'm not even going to test because why bother, you know,
Yeah.
and how that actually, and it's so funny because when we actually found out she was pregnant, she literally was like, she was telling me, I was feeling so good and now I'm not feeling so good. I think that there's something not quite right. My cycles they're regulated and now they're not regular anymore. I just feel like I just don't feel right. I think I've had some kind of infection. I feel just so tired and fatigued. I
I'm
said,
sort of smiling and giggling because
so
Caitlin and I have
have you,
had the same kind of thing so many times.
so,
People being,
you know,
yeah, I was so regular and now I'm not having my period again. And Caitlin and I are kind of sitting
And
there
you're
like,
like, go
mm-hmm.
test if you're pregnant.
but the funniest part about this is that, like, literally, I remember so clearly this conversation with this lady on the phone where she's telling me all of this. And I said, have you tested if you're pregnant? And she goes, don't be ridiculous, Gabriela. Of course I'm not pregnant. I was like, whoa. Like, she got angry with
Because
me
it's
for
so
suggesting,
painful.
you know?
Yes.
Yeah. And then of course, I was the one to my turn to get angry with her and go, hey, listen, you've just been doing fertility treatment. Like, the least you could do is actually go test, so you go get a pregnancy test and I will call you tomorrow. So I call her the next day and she's like, oh no, I didn't get a pregnancy test because I went to the chemist and all the kids from my school, she worked in a school, all the kids from my school in the chemist, so I couldn't get it. I'm like, let's talk to your husband right now. He needs to go get his pregnancy test. We need to know today. So, and then of course it turned out that she was pregnant. But, that those emotions are so real, like where you just don't want to get your hopes up. Even sometimes where people don't actually seek the right treatment and they don't do it because they just don't want to get their hopes up that this could be something that would work when everything else hasn't. How many times over the
Mhm.
years I
And then
have
that
heard
doesn't
this. I've
work.
heard,
So
what,
painful.
this sounds good, but I don't want to get my hopes up. I'm like, what? Like,
I
it's like,
know.
no,
I
no,
relate to
no.
that so much. I've been doing that about all kinds of dumb shit in my life, if we're saying that word on this episode today. But like, yeah. And then you have to take a step back and look at your life and say, if I don't have hope, what is the point of this? If there's no hope for a good future, what's the point of me trying to have a baby? If there's no hope that this could work, then why am I trying? And you think you're going to somehow protect yourself by not getting your hopes up. It never works. It never works. You never, I've never sat with someone through a pregnancy loss where they're like, gosh, I'm just so glad I didn't get excited about this one. Never. It hurts just as much. The loss is coming. I've never heard anybody say like, "Oh, I'm so glad I didn't feel happy yesterday," because
Or that I
it
didn't
makes me more
try,
sad.
like
Yeah.
and I think that, one of the other things that I often hear and people ask me is like, should I try this or when should I give up? And, I was having this conversation just yesterday with a couple because they had been trying for 12 years and the conversation was around, do we start treatment, do we not? And I said to him, I said, listen, here's how you need to look at this. You need to put yourself sitting on your porch, on your rocker, on your rocking chair at age 90, looking back at your life and asking yourself, what do you want to tell yourself about this stage in your life? Because what's the story that you want to tell about this? Because if the story is, I gave up and I just wanted to give up, that's great. But if the story is, I gave up and I should have tried, well, then you know your answer, right? And I think that a lot of times people already know their answer before and the fear comes from knowing that it's deeply something that they want, but they are too scared to admit, too scared to pursue, or feel vulnerable about what if I give it my all and this doesn't happen. And I think that on that note, the best way to address this is actually to go, you know what, I can't control the outcome. I can only control the effort that I put into this. And I am the only person who can determine when enough is enough. When is enough
Yeah.
effort
You
enough? You know?
you can't decide that for someone
No,
else.
Yeah,
you
no, you
can't.
can't.
And so, what ends up happening when people ask me that question, I'm like, okay, let me ask you some questions. What
Mhm.
is it that you want to tell yourself when it's all said and done? And what is it that you want to feel when it's all said and done? Because one of the things that I know for a fact, for having done this work for as many decades as I have, is that when people are done, they know it.
Mhm.
They're like, I am
I would
done.
I would say that really oftentimes what they're asking is, in your professional opinion, is there something that we haven't done yet that's worth doing and pursuing? Because the emotional piece of like, do I have the emotional bandwidth? Do I have the financial bandwidth? Do I have all of those things? Those are really a question for themselves to ask. And I understand and am asked these questions because you become this incredible confidant and counselor in a
Mm-hmm.
way to patients in this incredibly vulnerable space. But a lot of times, I think what they're really asking is there something in our case that's screaming this stone hasn't been looked under, or we haven't given enough time since implementing these things
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
consider asking for hope in this
I
case?
think, what's really fascinating and what's really wonderful about your question and what you've positioned there is this. You know how we were talking about the patients that changed my career? Well, One of them was a lady who literally had premature ovarian failure, and her FSH was in the hundreds, and both her and her husband were FBI agents. And I was like, oh my God. And the funniest part of about this story was that they asked me that question. Do you think there is still hope for us to conceive naturally with my own eggs? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I really don't. And literally, this woman pounds the table. She goes, I want to do your program because I want to know for myself that I've given it everything that I possibly could. So this woman, she really transformed the way that I looked at this, because her question to me was, do you think there's still hope? And I'm thinking to myself, no, but how do I put this to you gently? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening was, like, she pounded the table and she goes, listen, I want to do your program. I want to know that I've done everything that I possibly could. And I'm like, going, you're going to reduce my success rate. Um, you know, and purely selfishly. But what ended up happening was something that I never expected. We were able to get her cycles back. We were able to, and we use lots of different types of tools in order to be able to do this. Trained as a naturopathic practitioner, as a naturopathic doctor,
Mm-hmm.
herbal medicines is something that we do use. And so, supporting her body and supporting how she was cycling, which she had lost the cycles for a period of time, and then all of a sudden they returned, and she conceived naturally with her own eggs when I didn't think that it was going to
Told
happen.
her that it wasn't
I
possible.
told her,
Mm-hmm.
I like, if it talk about being proved wrong in the most, like, incredible of
Epic
way, in the
way.
most epic
Mm-hmm.
way possible. It's like, yeah, not only did I tell you I was going to do this, but I did it naturally. I'm like, what else can I say? What do I know? I know nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so this is the kind of thing that, and this is why I say that no matter what people tell you, I am a firm believer now, after that particular couple, kind of crossed paths with me, that even when people tell you that this is not possible, you don't know until you've done everything that you possibly can. And if in your heart of hearts, you feel that there is still a glimmer of hope, even if it is for you to go, okay, yep, I thought that, and now I understand because I've done everything that that wasn't the case, that's okay. But in her case, had I convinced her that no, this is not possible, well, guess what? We wouldn't have had this incredible child that could go on to change the world, right? And so now when people ask me that question, I do not answer with, I don't think this is possible. Not because in some instances there might be factors that are very clear that tells us that it doesn't, look like it's going to happen, but also because what I've learned over the years is this. Sometimes people come into treatment, and she was adamant that she never would have done donor egg, right? But I have had many people who, after they've done everything that they possibly could, they actually change their mind and they decide that, well, you know what, I still want a baby enough, more than a way to have a baby, that now that I have done all of these other things, I am willing to consider donor egg and go on to have babies in a different way to what they envisioned to begin with. But it is the family that they wanted to create with the outcome that they wanted to have in their life, right? And so that's why I don't give prognosis. All I say is, like, okay, how do you compare with patients like you who have gone through my program? How likely are we to have a baby? If there is more than a twofold increase in doing something versus doing nothing, we should do something, because the rest is no longer up to us. Like, I'm not God. If I had the crystal ball that tells us, this is exactly what's going to happen, I'll charge more. For sure, I'll charge more. um,
Well, I think the other piece of it is, with the type of medicine that you practice and the medicine that Sophia and I practice, there's a lot of effort on the individual's part. It's not like take these shots and show up and I'll do this procedure on you. It's like take this supplement in the evening and the morning. And, a lot of it is lifestyle medicine. And so you are oftentimes giving them kind of the keys of what they could do that could possibly work. But really, the pedal to the metal is on their own effort, like their own behalf. And they have to be willing to implement the
yeah.
things. And having that type of a conversation of their own buy-in and their own, how far have I come? How far am I still willing to go? I think is really important, because it's not like you just show up and the work is done for
Yeah.
you in this
No.
type of
Yeah.
medicine.
And I think that, I mean, no matter what kind of way you're going to go about it, if it hasn't been straightforward, it's going to require more, right? And usually the more is applied in the wrong direction. The more really should be applied in understanding the problem and scoping the problem, rather than treatment without an understanding of what's getting in the way. How often I speak to couples who, you know, have been given an unexplained infertility diagnosis. Now, we know it's not unexplainable, right? The fact that it's unexplained just tells us that that's where we begin, and that's where the
Mm-hmm.
work begins, and that's where there is work to be done, right? But
Mhm.
it's really important, I think, for people to take away from this conversation that unexplained anything is just the beginning of what you need to go and figure out.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I just want to ask you like so even many more questions. Like, okay, let's wrap it into one question, I suppose. So, what would you say the next step for our listener who's like, this is my story? We've maybe had some explanations. I've had, we had endometritis, we had that treated. I had endometriosis, so we had an excision. Blah blah blah. It's still no baby. People that have tried a lot of things. What would you say would be like your recommended next step for them?
Yeah, I would literally start from scratch. I would go, okay, this is the history. That's great. Now let's forget the history and let's assess you as a couple from zero. Like I know nothing about you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I approach this process is like, I'm interested in the history just so that I can go and ask the question of, okay, why did that fail? And if we don't have a good enough reason, then we need to understand what that reason is. But I don't start from what I know. I start from scratch always, because I know that if I don't, I will miss things, you see?
Mhm.
And so even when people tell me, oh, here are all my results, here are all my things, I go, okay, great. I want to see all of them because I do correlate them. I correlate them to their biochemistry, I correlate them to their genes. That's all work that we're going to do. But I get them to literally just tell me, first of all, what is happening right now. And now from that, let's look back and let's figure out, from the master checklist that comprises, what we do next and next and next and next, what has been done, what hasn't been done, what boxes have not been ticked that we have to, and what boxes have been ticked but need to be reopened and reinvestigated, because that also,
Mhm.
with the passing of time, that also becomes relevant. You see, you might
Absolutely.
have a situation where, and I mean, this is even before we open the can of worms, that is, long standing time to pregnancy and other factors that might get into that whole situation that then needs to be disentangled. That there's so many things, that can happen there. And the longer somebody has been trying, the more additive factors we need to consider. And that then aggregates for both partners, not just for one person, right? And so basically, we then need to figure out, okay, from all of the possible reasons as to why this is not happening, can we reasonably say that we are satisfied with what we are seeing, with what we understand? And if we're not, we have to keep escalating further testing and further investigations. This is why one of the reasons that we basically have and hold our patients' hands from beginning to baby and beyond is exactly that, is that we may still guide them towards IVF if that isn't going to be the most direct path to baby for them. It's not that we're against that. It's that what I am against is actually doing it cold. having gone through multiple failed cycles and still not understanding why they failed, and then just applying more treatment. That is a problem. The technology
Yeah,
itself is a
full
godsend,
agreement. You're like
you
putting
know.
into words my thoughts on that. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So, so then it's about figuring out, okay, where do we go? And the only way to figure out where to go is by looking at what has happened and where we are now, integrating those things, and then from there, making next step decisions. Now, when somebody, puts their hand up because they want to work with me or our team, what ends up happening is that we will assess the case first, right? So there's 5 things I look for. Is there work to be done? Is there work we can do? Have we done it before? Once I understand that, then I'm digging deeper into figuring out, are there any deal breakers? Because if somebody says to me, I have 2 blocked fallopian tubes and I will never do IVF, I'm going to say, that's fine, but I'm not going to be the person that can help you with that.
Yeah, go adopt an embryo.
Or if somebody says to me, I have been menopausal for a year and I absolutely will not consider donor egg, as much as I have been proven wrong, I am not going to simply say, look, let's go and do this, because ultimately I know that the chances of success are going to be so, so small. And so then I will elect to recommend that they do something else, right? I will take on cases that I truly believe that I can help. And then at the end of that, my 5th thing is now looking at, because what we want to do really as a clinic and as a team, we want to demonstrate clinical effectiveness so that we can make a case for changing the healthcare system, so that we can actually, help couples not have to go through those experiences of multiple failures and actually have a way to start that process in a better way to begin with. And to do that, you have to demonstrate clinical effectiveness. If you don't, nobody's even going to care about cost effectiveness, you see? And so we're aggregating
Right.
data now for the last 15 years so that we can continue to build a case for this, attribution and this insertion into a better way for couples who are struggling to have an avenue to actually get the support they need.
Hey, friends, we're taking a break from our episode to talk about one of our sponsors. And this sponsor is the PCOS app. Did you know that I made an app all about PCOS? Well, I did, and you can find so many resources in it. We have slowly moved all the resources from my PCOS Hormone Academy course over into the PCOS app, and that talks about all things PCOS topically. Like if you have acne, you can go look at the skin and acne modules and see, what does Western medicine offer? Why does this impact PCOS? What can we do about it? What are natural remedies? What are nutritional remedies? We talk about hair loss and hirsutism all through that lens where we go through, what is it? Why is it impacted by PCOS? Or why do we need to pay more attention to this particular thing? And what can we do about it? And we provide a vast resource to help you both advocate for yourself at the doctor's office and treat yourself at home naturally. Now, the exciting thing that I want to share with you is starting in January 2025, we're starting to migrate all of the content that I have published so far on fertility into this app. I used to sell a course for $700 all about how to get pregnant with PCOS, and that is all getting moved into the app between January and March. So you can take the course as if you enrolled in the whole thing for $10 per month. So head to your app store, whether you're on a Google Android device or an Apple device. If you type in PCOS app, you just look for that really pretty lavender flower. You'll find it. Download it and join us because you're going to get weekly recipes and all the fertility focused PCOS content that you need. It will start being uploaded under the Academy tab. So stay tuned for that. And let's get back to our episode. Can I ask you one more question about your clinic specifically and kind of your programming? What type of testing would be like a typical workup for somebody if you're saying, let's start at nothing. Let's pretend like we know nothing and we're building a case from scratch. What does that look like?
We will be here for another 10 hours. Now, look.
No, but like what's a typical workup?
Yeah.
Blood testing, stool testing, genome testing.
Yeah, what do you do?
Semen analysis. What type of analysis is it?
We will do
you know.
all of those things. The order in which we will do them will depend, right? So it will also depend on what they have had done and what they haven't, right? SNPs, for example, we will do it for every one of our patients. But is it the very first thing we do? No, because it's not the easiest immediately,
Mm-hmm.
right? The easiest
Mm-hmm.
immediately is obviously blood tests. And, obviously all your imaging where necessary. Basically, it's very much a personalized process. As you know, you can't just
Mm-hmm.
go and say to a doctor, here's a list of 100 tests, order all of them. They're going to go,
And then
yeah, no.
interpret all of them and then treat me based off of what you found.
Exactly. It's not going to happen, right? And so we start with what is it that's reasonable and feasible to go to your primary doctor and ask, so that then we can tailor next steps for testing according to what has been found. Because, for example, ordinarily, if you go to any doctor, you will be able to get a TSH tested, but you won't be able to get a T3, T4, antibodies on a first test being covered by your insurance just because you want it. Right. And so we have to stage that as much as, any doctor may, although we already know the end result. The end game is we want to get all of those tests done. So then
Right.
how do we actually order the
Advocate for
order of
that.
events? How do we advocate? How
Mm-hmm.
do we build a case for requesting and somewhat demanding that these things get done based on what we have as far as data, right? So we have to
Mm-hmm.
build that data file from scratch in many cases, or we literally go from, okay, here's a history. We'll leverage the history when we can, when we go for testing, because obviously that's there, and then that makes it easier for us to actually be able to do something else. That we don't start from scratch, because otherwise we would get even fewer tests done. So from the perspective of figuring out, okay, what has been done and what do we already know, and what do we either need to know from current, but what do we need to know in addition now that we have that information, is essentially part of the steps that we will take to make sure that we get all of the clarity that we need. And still, some of the tests are going to have to be paid out of pocket. For example, DNA fragmentation and a semen analysis will invariably need to be paid out of pocket. A semen culture will invariably need to be paid out of pocket. Antibodies, same thing. Are they necessary? They are essential if things haven't been straightforward, right? And in some cases where it's not possible to test, for example, DNA fragmentation is impossible to test in some countries. So what we do is we treat as if we have very high DNA fragmentation, and we look at proxy markers for inflammation and oxidative stress in other areas of metabolic health, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's about kind of piecing together this puzzle so that we understand what's going to best benefit this particular individual. And of course, if we know that we have obesity, if we have metabolic syndrome, if we have insulin resistance, we don't even need to ask if DNA fragmentation is going to be an issue. So there are certain things that you don't need to test to know. What becomes useful is to test as a measure of seeing improvement, because
Yeah.
if you know that it's there to begin with and we're treating, it becomes then a process of okay, do we need to put in more effort, or is the level of effort that we're putting in enough?
Mm-hmm.
So those are all of the ways in which we would go
What do
about
you even
understanding
do
that.
for DNA fragmentation?
Well, heat is a big issue. So whether there are varicocele, whether there are, toxicants as well, is going to be smoking, drugs, alcohol, heat to the testicles, sitting down in a chair all day. All of those factors are going to actually increase DNA fragmentation and motility and morphology issues, and even count issues. So, that's just a handful of things to think about. But basically, there are many different things that you would apply if that was going to be elevated. If somebody is insulin resistant, have a big belly. We know that waist to hip ratio is a measure. Like if it's elevated for men, 0.9 and below is where we want to see it for a waist to hip ratio. For women, it's 0.7 and below. If we know that we have more than 0.9 and above for a man, we know that sperm is going to be compromised from a metabolic standpoint. So all of those different factors are factors that we're like, process of elimination. Have we checked it? Yes. Are we good? Yes. Are we not good? All right, let's figure it out. So all of that is going to make a difference, across the ultimate outcome that we're wanting to create, especially when there have been failed treatments and, miscarriages. Really essential.
Where can people find out more about you, Gabriela, and more about your clinic and the work that you do?
So I do a lot of patient education on Instagram, at Gabriela Rosa Fertility. And people can go to my website, which is fertilitybreakthrough.com. They can also find and request a copy of my book, Fertility Breakthrough, that you mentioned in the beginning. It's available free on Spotify and YouTube. So people can go and find that. And we run the free program that we've been running for the last 15 plus years called the Fertility Challenge, which if people search Gabriela Rosa Fertility Challenge, they will be able to find that. And also they'll be able to register through the website. So fertilitybreakthrough.com.
Okay, I just followed you on Instagram. I'm very excited to myself listen more to you because I'm hooked. Hook, line, and sinker. You got me.
Oh,
Amen. We're so happy you came on, Gabriella. This was really, really informative, and I think a high value episode for our listeners that are trying to move the needle ever so desperately. So thank you,
thank you so
truly, for
much.
coming on here
Thank you.
and
Thank
giving
you
us
for
your
having
time.
me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Let's hit some yeah girls.
Yeah, girl segment on this podcast, Gabriela, is where we say things that we're like, man, that's cool. Yeah, girl. So um I'm gonna not go first.
I'll
I
go
thought I
first.
had one, but I don't. You go first.
My husband's home today, and he'll be home tomorrow
Yeah.
too. And so that's very exciting. He works out of town, and he works for like 3 weeks at a stretch, and then he'll come home for a couple weeks, then he'll be gone, and then he'll come home. But he got a little bit of a break for a couple days, so he's home. And beyond that, he told me the sweetest thing. So I am a very sentimental person. And I am always looking at like old pictures and old notes and like watching videos of my kids when they were little babies and stuff like that. I'm very sentimental. And I will often send, if a video pops up on my, remember this on this day back in 2023. And so it showed me a video of my oldest at maybe 10 months old dancing to the Golden Girls theme song because I was watching Golden Girls, which is like my favorite show. And she was so cute. And I sent it to my husband. He didn't reply. But then this morning he was telling me, like, oh my goodness, that video came in when I was closing up the range last night. And I watched it. And then right then, one of my buddies who I was like working with shows me his phone, like his 3-month-old daughter. And I just was like, you you're not even going to know how good it is right now, and you're going to look back and just I look back at her just like the sweetest, most beautiful, amazing creature. Like I can't, what I wouldn't do to just reach through the screen and hold her again and look at her. And like I look back at my, what was I doing? It's like I was working hard and I still would have, but it just motivates me so much in what I'm doing and in my work to keep working hard. And I think about things that I get so worried about around the house. Like I look in that video and I'm like, oh, she's like, touching the shoes. She's going to like mess up your shoes being in a really specific position is like a very, very important factor to my husband. And he's like, oh my gosh, like when that was happening, I was like, oh, the shoes, like she's going to touch them and they're going to not be, parallel anymore. And he's like, but I just am like, what am I even thinking about that for? Like, look at this beautiful creature in front of me. And it was just so sweet that he thinks like that, and he's not just, sometimes a video was like important to you and you showed to somebody and they're like, oh yeah, cute, but he really was like touched by it, and it just had him like reflecting and then saying to his friend with just a brand new 3-month-old daughter, like, oh, your life, like, oh, so beautiful. And it lit me up. I loved it. So that's my yeah girl.
Ooh, I love that.
That's
Yeah,
That's
girl.
sweet.
Yeah, Louie. Yeah.
Because you wonder
very
when they're
cute.
Okay.
away all the time, like, do you even think about us? It's stupid, but they do.
Huh. Okay. My yeah girls, your life in opposite. BJ's literally hopping on a plane as we speak. He came and kissed me like right before I hopped on this call. And I was like, man, I wish that you weren't going on this trip. He's like, I can't tell you how hard I wished the government shutdown was just going to make my plane get canceled and I could just stay home with my family. He's
Yeah.
like, I just wish I could just not have to ever leave. I don't want to go on this work trip. And I was like, man, it's really nice to have a husband that likes to be with your family. So yours is
Isn't
home,
it?
mine is gone, but
But
it's
the
so
same
nice
heart
to
in
be in a
both.
loving, wonderful
The
relationship.
same,
Yeah. So
isn't it?
I'm gonna
Somebody that
celebrate
wants to
the same
be
thing in
with
reverse.
you, somebody
Yeah,
that
it's the
wants to be
best.
with your kids and isn't like,
Ladies, build families with those kind of
Oh
men.
yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
don't do it if you're not with that kind of
yeah,
person.
not the guy that's like living for the golf course or for the release of Halo 5, or that probably made me seem really old. Halo's probably on its like 35th iteration by now. But you know what I mean? Who's like living for his video game or whatever. Somebody
Yeah.
that like looks at this morning, even my kids like clamoring to get in his lap at breakfast
So
and
sweet.
just giving him so many kisses. It's like they almost wanted to like crawl inside his body. And I'm like, this is it. You know what? This is what
This is
men
the
are
life.
living for, is for this sweet, healthy little kids that can't wait to see daddy and just want to pet you and touch you and be with you and sit in
Mhm.
your lap and eat all the bacon off your plate. He was like, damn it. I wanted this
I
bacon.
looked over at church the other day and Seamus was just petting BJ's beard. And I was like, that feeling is so good. Just like when somebody cups your face or like
Oh,
this
I
sweet
hate
little
that. I don't want
4-year-old
people's
just like
hands on my face.
cupping.
That bothers me. But
Oh,
the
you're so
sentiment
funny.
is very
Okay,
sweet.
Gabriela, yours don't have to be about those exact things, but just something you're so happy about that we can say, yeah,
You
girl,
know,
that's so great.
today I'll have to be on a very practical note of my girl. I actually got to do all of my laundry. Like
Yeah.
all of my sheets have been washed, all of my like the doona covers, duvet covers, the this, the that, the all the things. It's like it's such a
You
feeling of like,
zeroed out your laundry. You kidding me? This is what moms of littles like us are
Dreams are made
dreaming
of.
for.
can you believe it?
That is a yeah girl and
That's
a half. That's a
amazing.
hell
So,
yeah
Yeah,
you
girl
girl.
know,
right there.
And then you hopped on this call.
can you
Amazing.
see? I mean, like this has been like the, and
Wonder
it's
Woman.
been wonderful because it's seldom that I have this feeling of accomplishment for my day. There's
Uh-huh.
usually so many
There's
appointments and
always
running
more to be
here, there, and
done.
everywhere. And
Uh-huh.
it's just like before I got onto the call, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm so ahead today. It was
Yeah, you
lovely.
are. In a
You're ahead in
snowy
life.
Boston
Yeah.
day.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
actually
Are
stopped.
you
Like
gonna
I,
like
I reckon I saw like 2 flakes of snow because it stopped already. So,
are you gonna like shave your legs and wash your hair and like do all the things and get into bed totally clean and fresh in
y-
your totally
you
clean and
know,
fresh sheets?
that
That is like
sound.
such an
You've just given
experience.
me the best idea. You've just given me the
Oh
best
yeah.
idea.
That's the
That's a
feeling.
crisp
That
life experience right there.
Yes, yes. Especially because my kids right now are in Sydney and I am in Boston. So,
mhm.
it's going to be just about me today. It's lovely.
It is just about you. How old are your children?
13 and 10.
No.
Yeah.
That's the stage of parenting I can only dream of. I can't wait.
Oh, what?
Well, Gabriela,
How old
you
are
are the
yours?
best. 8, 6, and 4.
8, 6, and 4. Okay, so they're little. And what
And
about
then
you,
I've
Sophia?
got a 4, almost 5, a just turned 3, and then I'm about to hit 19 weeks here.
Oh, look at you. Oh, that's so lovely. What
Yeah.
a beautiful bump. Yeah, no,
Thank
it's
you.
look,
Beautiful
I'll
bump.
tell you what, 13 is an experience, I have to say. I encountered it this year. Whew. It's
Deep breaths.
it's
We were all
relearning.
13 once.
Relearning,
Yeah.
exactly. It's relearning how to parent for me right now. So, but it's been, he's a beautiful boy. So I'm very, very, very
Yeah.
grateful. So thank you. I
Awesome.
loved being here
Thank
with you
you for
guys today.
coming. Yeah. Is this book already completely
It
released?
is
People can
indeed.
find it.
Ooh la
Awesome.
They can find it
la.
on
Okay.
Amazon and
We should.
everywhere.
I didn't even know it. We should have hit up your PR lady for some
I know,
nice
I would have read that book.
example copies. I totally would have.
But
loved
by
it.
all, like, you guys can do it now. You can even,
Okay.
listen to it in my own voice. Imagine.
Ooh, and that Australian voice?
Yeah, I read the book for the recording.
I love it. I love it. You know what? That is what I'm gonna do actually, because that sounds like a dream. You're gonna hang out with me on my walks around the neighborhood
Love
in
it.
this crisp fall weather.
You
It'll
will
be
you will find it free on Spotify and YouTube. So go for gold.
awesome. Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much
love that.
for
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, well, listener, and thank you for listening. We hope that this was a very illuminating episode for you, that you feel rejuvenated in your quest for your growing family. So please rate, review, subscribe, send an episode to a friend. It helps other people find us. And other people are crying out right now, wishing that they could have this information, and here it is for free. So interact, please, and we will see you on the next episode.